Something is a foot. Well, a shoe, but it goes on a foot. There's a new foaming filament out there that is both flexible but also bounces, and also is softer than usual, and isn't a total nightmare to print. This is Roma, let's go. This video is sponsored by Siraya Tech, who also provided the Roma filament and a vast amount of assistance and knowledge to make sure that at least most of what I discuss today is correct and informative. I will leave links to this filament and Siraya Tech's site in the description. So if you're already thinking that you know the answer to what this filament is, no you don't. This is not PIBA. We already did PIBA last year. We're talking about a new filament that is not PIBA but is most definitely TPU. I've seen the MSDS, so I know it's TPU, but it bounces. Part of the reason it bounces is because, as you already noticed from the finish, it's a foaming filament. We've dug into foaming filaments before, but I think we should really go a bit deeper in this episode, so let's go a bit deeper. A foaming filament isn't that complicated. It's a simple mixture of the base polymer, i.e. the actual thermoplastic, with additives that are called chemical blowing agents. These are not some super secret or exotic chemical. In fact, a common one that's used in some of these filaments is sodium bicarbonate. I think, but I can't be certain, that this is what some of the older foaming formulas used in filament were, but Siraya Tech uses a different compound, which I won't tell you what that is, but if you really want to know, you can actually tell what it is from the temperature it foams at. It's a specific signature that points to a certain chemical compound. What you're seeing is the foaming TPU under the microscope. Yes, we have a microscope now. We don't want the science channels having all the fun after all, do we? You can see the filament is full of something. It looks like bubbles, but I believe it's actually a solid mixed in with the filament. If you're wondering how they make this stuff without it foaming during extrusion at the factory, so was I, so I looked it up. The likelihood is that the factory has high pressure extrusion capabilities way beyond what we can do here, and that's in conjunction with making sure that the temperature doesn't exceed the activation temperature of the filament. What you're looking at now is the filament after extrusion at the same scale. As you'd expect, there's now definitely air bubbles, but what's interesting here is that because the process is happening in a relatively molten elastic thermoplastic, the bubbles always have a tendency to stay closed, meaning they're not bursting. So what you have here is a closed foam that has a lot of gas content. How much gas content? Well, glad you asked. You see, the amount of expansion is a non-linear relationship with extrusion temperature. Meaning, specifically, the hotter you print, the more the filament expands, but significantly more with higher temperatures. The chart you see on screen is taken from the datasheet, but I've actually correlated it with my personal data and weight results, and it correlates just fine. Printing with foaming filament is actually not that difficult, but you need to know how to use it, and you need to follow the instructions. That's the important part, because as we mentioned just now, the filament expands with temperature, and consequently there's a reference chart available of flow rate multiplier by temperature. If you print below the activation temperature of the filament, in theory you would choose about 1.05 as a multiplier. That's standard for TPU, and as you increase the temperature, you will reduce that multiplier to reduce the amount of unfoamed material being sent to the nozzle. Essentially, the multiplier is the ratio of input material to output material, and you need to give the material room to expand into if the output material is greater volume than the input material. If you didn't do this, then the material either won't expand, or more likely, it will still expand, and it's just going to make a mess. As a result, you get a range of different densities, which in turn means a range of different weights, which in turn means a range of different shore hardnesses, all the way down to 64A, and my results are on screen. This is also explained fully in the printing guide, which is available for this filament. What you will generally do for foaming TPUs is make a set of profiles in your slicer where you set the print temperature and the flow multiplier, and that's the only variable between each profile. Once you've got one set up, you just go through and make new ones for each temperature, and you name them by the expected shore hardness, and then you never really have to think about it again. You just choose a shore hardness, and that's what will come out of the printer. I'll share mine for the printers that I've been testing with to save time if you have one of those printers. If you don't, you'll have to make your own. It doesn't take too long. So why does this filament exist when we already have got these two from Siraya Tech even already? And I covered those before. We had PIBA Air and we had TPU Air. The last video was about PIBA, but I didn't mention the TPU. Why do we need Roamr? The official explanation from Siraya is that they wanted a filament that prints like foaming TPU, but as I discussed in the PBA video, TPU doesn't bounce, so they wanted a filament that has an energy return closer to PBA, but without the stiff finish that you get with the nylon-based PBA. Ultimately, what we have here is a middle ground that they've developed with footwear and footwear-related products in mind. You might have noticed that I have two shore hardness versions, and this is because they've identified that some printers will struggle with 80A filament just generally, and others will print it fine. I'm expecting they'll probably have at least some compatibility notes, maybe a list of which printers suit which filament in due course. But for this video, I've used what I'm showing on screen, and that's with no problems at all, and the bulk of my testing has been on the new Snapmaker U1, which I'm sure if you're following the channel you will know about that printer by now. And without trying to pile even more praise on the Snapmaker U1, I have been feeding even the 80A through the filament feeders. Now, Sirayatech have got a guide on how to use the U1, and they recommend using a dry box going up the back. I didn't even do that. I do recommend that, but I didn't even do that. And as long as you manually feed it into the extruder when at the other end, after the feeder has taken it to almost the extruder, you do the last bit for it using the manual feed process, then it will work fine and it will have no problems at all. I had absolutely no errors during the entire making of this video, and that involved a lot of printing, trust me. The U1 is still my recommendation. It's not even close right now, as you may have gathered from the previous videos, but I will shut up about the U1. We have some bounce tests. Last time in the PBA video, I tried to bounce actual balls. The thing about printing balls in TPU of any kind, especially foaming TPU generally does not like overhangs, especially the ones that you have on balls, because they can be quite steep. It doesn't look like it because it's a sphere, but the underside of a ball is really difficult to print. So spheres are quite frankly never going to be coming out uniform. They usually come out looking more like weird onions. This time I'm using ball bearings dropped from a known height onto a double-sided taped down piece. It's closer to the scientific process. The scientific process seems to use a swinging hammer. I could have done that, but I didn't do that. And so this is indicative and not accurate, if that makes sense. There will be some losses in the system anyway, because the tape won't be holding the piece of plastic perfectly. You can hopefully see that the energy return and thus the bounce heights are pretty exciting for a TPU, and they do represent a closer rebound to a PBA, which is exactly what we expected. And no, I don't know how they've done it. It's got to be a trade secret. And now onto the shoe. Other than that the filament can be used to print this shoe, and it looks a lot nicer aesthetically than the ones printed in plain TPU. I can't imagine trying to walk around in those. It's likely to be a lot easier on the foot. I can't really add a lot to that, other than you can already see. It looks pretty good. But the shoe and the next application I found bring us on to the next thing I want to discuss. And this is what I think is game changer territory. I always try and put something into every video that's going to surprise you, or at least give you something new that you can apply yourself. And here's the story as to how I came around to it. It's a slightly lengthy one, so bear with me. You see, with foaming TPU, one of the things you may have noticed is it foams. Maybe you noticed, maybe you didn't. Don't worry, it gets less obvious. But because it foams, if you think about it for a moment about how that might affect extrusion, particularly when you start and stop, starting isn't a huge issue, but it seems that stopping is. Normally, when we want to stop extruding on a print, we retract the filament, and the main reason we do this is because we want to create low pressure at the end of the nozzle to stop any dripping or oozing of any of the filament that still remains in the nozzle. So what you want to do in the first place is what you normally do, and you make sure there's no seams or jumps anywhere where you want the finished product to be neat. And there is a setting to stop the nozzle leaving the part unnecessarily called avoid crossing walls. It works really well when the part is broadly contiguous, as you can see. But if I go slightly higher up this part, it splits into 3 sections, so the topology is such that you have to cross the walls, and you can't avoid that. What do you do then? And actually, the answer is very simple. When this kind of TPU oozes, it leaves a very distinct kind of artifact that looks quite terrible in the finished product, but actually it's only very weakly attached, so it is a very simple matter of post-processing, meaning just pulling these things off or clipping them off with snips. Which is not a million miles away from the kind of post-processing that you would do with supports, and the post-processing especially that you would do with SLA prints. But that got me thinking, because this stuff is very much less like traditional TPU, and it's very much closer to the kind of EVA foam that you use for crafts. With that kind of foam, it's entirely normal to just get scissors out and cut it. And what do you know? You can do that here. I think as 3D printer users, we formed this idea that I would call the one tool theory, where unlike almost any other manufacturing method, we've got it into our heads somehow that the one tool makes everything and no other tool is needed and no other tool should be used. It's kind of like this weird origami logic where you're not allowed to cut the paper, but instead you're not allowed to finish the print. It has to come off the printer perfect. But I think that works to our disadvantage because it psychologically rules out other options. In this case, being able to easily and neatly cut foaming TPU without making a mess and without having to use any special tools other than a pair of scissors or a craft knife, it means that at both design time and slice time, because you can add things in the slicer, remember, we can add our own custom parts to support the print. And these can actually, in some cases, make full contact with the print and simply be cut away. So for this part that has an obvious bridging problem, if you know TPU, you'll know TPU doesn't bridge, and it also has a stability problem. As the tool head gets towards the top of the towers, they wobble around, and honestly, considering how much they move around, I'm surprised it prints even remotely the right shape. Somehow it does. We can solve both of these problems though with a cutout section that we just trim off afterwards. The thought process that led to this boat existing was something that Siraya Tech had told me early on in the process, but I think they probably didn't mean it quite this literally. When you're printing, say, an insole or the inner part of a shoe where your foot goes, one of the things you can do, but how you do it is slicer dependent, is to mark certain areas for different infill or wall properties, so different densities of infill, different number of walls. So if you want a squishy bit somewhere in the insole of the shoe, but you want more support in, say, the middle where the arch is, I'm not into shoes, I have no idea what I'm talking about here, but you can make a modifier to adjust those properties. Thing is, and again, game changer territory, if you have a multi-tool or multi-color setup yourself, you'll know that virtually all of them allow you to map the tools that you've sliced for new tools when you actually get to the print part. And you can even do this on the printer in most cases. So we can actually leverage that, and we can have up to 4 different shore hardnesses by means of having the 4, or in some cases more than 4 tool slots set to different print profiles, which relate to different print temperatures, as we talked about before. So the printer thinks it's printing different filaments, and it will change between them. It will do a tool change or a color change. The great part about doing this is you don't have to worry too much about the lag in changing temperature, because that's happening in the prime tower. The downside is that if you're using, for example, last-gen printers that waste a lot of filament, purging out the nozzle between changes, it's, of course, entirely unnecessary. You could, I guess, set purge amounts to low. That can be an exercise for the viewer. So what you end up with is this kind of thing. So onto applications of this filament. You've seen some already, but the applications for this kind of filament are pretty broad. Sometimes there might be an overlap between, say, foaming PBA, foaming TPU, and this. Aside from shoes, we'll come back to shoes in a moment, you can use this kind of closed foam anywhere that you need a squishy foam with some bounce to it, preferably, because obviously that's what it's designed for. So an obvious use would be in exercise equipment, including a seat cover for an exercise bike comes to mind, or indeed handlebar covers, and I probably will print some of those myself. As well, maybe something like knee protection. The obvious one, of course, is cosplay, because of how easy this stuff is to work with, and it's incredibly lightweight if you've got to handle it all day. And the finish looks really good. Also drone parts and landing parts for drones and planes. If you want your drone to float if it accidentally lands on water and not sink, then this will do that too. I actually think that what's really happening in the wider industry is something we need to pay more attention to. We are fast approaching a point where we have, for example, load up PBA in one tool, foaming TPU like Roma in another. Find yourself a product, just pick up any random product, and you'll see that it's probably made out of several materials, several stages. And I think as multi-material printing and multi-material printers get more and more sophisticated, and as more materials like Roma come into the market, you're able to actually make finished prints. Either you're partially making them and assembling them, just adding the hardware, but it just kind of increases the complexity of the things that we can print, and it increases the sophistication of what's coming out of the printer at the other end. And so I think that's where I expect things to go in the future. With the latest generation of printers, we have much more capability with multi-materials. And in the case of printers like the Snapmaker U1, I did say I'd stop talking about upgrade to this, but I really do think we have much more robust compatibility with a much, much wider range of filaments. And I do think, this is possibly a prediction for 2026, but it might take a bit longer, I think we're about to see a boom of true multi-material prints, which include materials like Roma and foaming PIBA, and probably a bunch of new materials that aren't even out yet, and they will bring new properties to the table that we previously did not have. And if you're excited by that, and have that capability, if you have a printer that can do it, as that is indeed becoming more democratized in 2026 too, I urge you to have a go with it and see what you can do, because a lot of this stuff is going to come out of the community. I will leave a link in the description for Roma, and please go and check that out. It should be released by the time this video is out, and you can go and check that out, check the price. I don't know the price yet, but don't forget, of course, you're expanding it, so you get way more than you normally would. And with that, I think I'm done. If you have any comments, put them down below. I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.